So, switching focus to Western Europe and Western Christianity. With the fall of the Roman Empire, Western Christianity is put into a pretty difficult situation. Um, Rome is still by far the biggest and most developed city in Western Europe, but its population tumbles by 80, 90% over a few hundred years. Um, and what formerly was the western half of the Roman Empire is now divided into small Germanic kingdoms. These Germanic kingdoms are incessantly at war with one another for obviously land and resources. And what you see very rapidly is a complete breakdown of the Roman way of life. Without the empire there to support it, the infrastructure of Western Europe breaks down. The bureaucracy of the Roman Empire completely falls apart. Um, Education goes away, roads break down, bridges break down, aqueducts stop flowing, sewers back up. Um, Education drops to almost nothing. The literacy rate in Western Europe dips under 5% for several hundred years. Um, Urbanization declines. People are forced to move out of cities because there's not enough food and there's not enough resources to support populations of that size anymore. Cultural output essentially vanishes. Literature, monumental architecture, trade, education, all of these like hallmarks of Roman society, of the Roman way of life, the games, gladiators, um, all of these things, essentially vanish and they are replaced with a much smaller, much less interconnected way of life. The quality and the scope of life shrinks. Western Europe essentially regresses in terms of their development. The majority of the population subsists on small scale peasant farming. There is little to no specialization of labor. People are required to become essentially self sufficient. Whatever needs they have to provide for themselves, whether it's clothing, housing, tools, food. There is almost no travel. There is no trade. The security that the Roman Empire provided that enabled those things to take place is now gone. Um, Basically, people become, I don't want to say trapped, but essentially trapped. Generations of families never leave the land that they were born on. Infant mortality skyrockets because there is very little access to clean drinking water. There's very little access to any kind of medicine. Um, I mean, essentially, life after the Roman Empire regresses to a point of almost Neolithic standards, pre-classical standards almost. And because of the breakdown in travel and communication and Roman infrastructure, Western Europe essentially becomes culturally and technologically and economically isolated from the rest of Eurasia. I mean, there are still connections with the Eastern Roman Empire, with Byzantium, but as far as being integrated into the Mediterranean trade networks, as far as being integrated into the big three networks, it really doesn't exist in Western Europe anymore. So this map kind of illustrates what I'm talking about when I talk about the division of Western Europe. This shows Western Europe only 50 years after the abdication of the last emperor of the Roman or the Western Roman Empire. You can see that there are several large Germanic kingdoms, but even within these Germanic kingdoms, there are local rivalries, there are tribal rivalries, and these kingdoms are constantly fluctuating back and forth between one another. And the warfare between them is pretty unending. Now, through all of this political and economic instability, the one stable thing in the majority of people's lives is the church, specifically the Roman Catholic Church. And for several centuries after the fall of Rome, the Roman Catholic Church basically becomes the center of all life in Western Europe. Most people and their existence revolves around their local church. And the church plays a number of different roles. It wears a number of different hats during this time period. It has both a religious role and a secular one. Religiously, it provides spiritual hope of a better afterlife. It provides faith in a caring and loving God who will reward his followers. It's one of the few cultural culturally unifying things about Western Europe. Um, but it also, and almost more importantly during this period, it provides secular functions, things like charity. It provides, at least a semblance of law and, legal system. And to a very small degree, it is the only source of education during this time period. Although most of that education is restricted to members of the church or the clergy. Now, because of their very influential role and the fact that they are, kind of the only source of stability for, millions of people in Western Europe, the Roman Catholic Church expands during this time period, as most every other Roman tradition is retreating. Roman infrastructure and Roman bureaucracy and Roman law and Roman government are all withering away and dying. This one cultural aspect of Rome, the Roman Catholic Church, actually expands during this time. Part of this is because of their vast missionary work all throughout Europe. Um, they also prove to be very adaptable in terms of appealing to these new Germanic pagan tribes that are flowing into the former Roman Empire. Um, some examples would be the celebration of Jesus's birth, Christmas. The date of December 25th is not the original date of Jesus's birth. Now, there is no exact way to pinpoint that, and there is no recorded record of it. But based on astrological and astronomical studies of the Bible, I mean, it's pretty well agreed upon that Jesus was actually born during the summer. But in order to expand their appeal amongst these pagan tribes, one of the things that the Roman Catholic Church does is it moves the celebration of Christmas, right, the celebration of Jesus' birth, to coincide with the winter solstice that these pagan tribes already practice and celebrate. So that enables them to appeal to more of these pagan tribes. It gives them, connections and links to them. Also, the date of Easter, which is an incredibly, monumental occasion within the Christian faith, the resurrection of Jesus, is moved also to coincide with the end of the spring harvest in Western Europe, so that the celebration of Jesus' resurrection and this time of celebration within Christianity coincides with an already existing time of celebration in the pagan belief system. Another aspect of the Roman Catholic Church that helps feed their growth during this period is the monastic movement, right? The development of monasteries and of this tradition of monks who basically, similar to Buddhist monks, they abandon worldly possessions, they abandon worldly connections, and they devote themselves full time to the work, the study, and devotion to God. And in a world where things are not politically stable, they're not economically stable, this is a very appealing way of life. This gives direction and hope to a lot of people who don't see much in their everyday lives to be hopeful about. It also offers safety and security, a bed, 3 meals a day. Monasteries offer education, they offer job training. This is one of the earliest opportunities for women to break out of their roles in Western Europe after the Roman Empire. One of the other aspects of the Roman Catholic Church that enables it to survive is, unlike the Orthodox Church, there is a strong separation of church and state in Roman/Western Christianity. And because of this, after the Roman Empire falls, the Roman Catholic Church does not necessarily fall with it. It has its own separate power structure. It has its own accumulated wealth. It has its own lands. It has its own, bureaucracy, for lack of a better term. That separation of church and state allows it to, again, be very adaptable and very flexible to changing power structures. The Bishop of Rome, the Pope, becomes a wealthy and powerful figure in and of his own right. And that wealth and that power is not linked to the rise and fall of any particular empire the way that the Patriarch of Constantinople is. Now, what this enables the Roman Catholic Church to do is to form alliances with various Germanic kingdoms to not only ensure their survival, but to propagate their growth. And the Roman Catholic Church has a lot to offer these Germanic kingdoms. It can offer massive financial support, which, ambitious Germanic kings are always in need of more money to fund further armies. But it also offers spiritual and cultural unity, right? A lot of these pagan tribes are very polytheistic, and there's a lot of feuds and rivalries between competing gods. With the advent of Christianity and the advent of monotheism into these pagan belief systems, what it does is it enables these kings to pull together many of the different rival parts of their own kingdoms, right? It gives them a common thread that they can unify and fight behind. In return for this spiritual and financial support, these Germanic kingdoms provide converts, they provide land, and they provide protection for the Roman Catholic Church, its monasteries, its lands all around Europe. Now, the most successful and the most expansive of these alliances that the Roman Catholic Church forms is with a kingdom and a tribe known as the Franks. And this is the most powerful tribe in what's known as the former Roman province of Gaul, which is now modern day France. In 496, the king of the Franks, by the gentleman by the name of Clovis, converts to Christianity, and there's a lot of different stories about how he converts. That kind of worked their way into Christian mythology. There's one about how, in the middle of a battle, he sees a vision of Jesus and offers himself to Jesus if Jesus will help him win this battle. And, is there a possibility that that's true? Sure, there is. There absolutely is. But here's the thing. if you study the story of how Constantine the Great was convinced to convert to Christianity, it's exactly the same story. So, this idea of like spontaneous conversion after a vision of Jesus, this is a running theme in Christianity, right? If you think back to Saul of Tarsus, who becomes, the apostle Paul, um, he also immediately converts to Christianity after, you know, um, having a vision of Jesus on the road to Damascus. So, I mean, is the story true? Who knows? That's one of those things. I guess, if one of y'all invents a time machine, you can go back and discover that. Um, what's probably more likely is that he married a Christian, and his wife exerted quite a bit of influence over him. So, and there's probably a lot of different factors going into this. But regardless of that, so 496, Clovis converts. And so essentially, this is a top down conversion. Once the king converts, that filters down through the ranks of society, until pretty much everybody is on board. And over the next several centuries, the church continues to support the Franks and their expansion. And the Franks continue to support the church by requiring conquered peoples to convert to Christianity or essentially face death. And there's evidence of many, considerable times where conquered tribes refused to convert, and the Franks put quite a few people to death, for their lack of faith. Um, from there, the Franks win a really important battle at Tours against the Umayyad Caliphate in. Why am I not remembering? Sorry, I blanked. You can look it up. The Battle of Tours. Um, this is the battle that we've talked about quite a bit. That essentially prevents the spread of Islam further into Western Europe, basically halts the expansion of Islam at northern Spain. And because of that, that really kind of cements the marriage between the Franks and the Roman Catholic Church. Now, fast forward 4 generations from Clovis, and you have the reign of Charles the Great, also known as Charlemagne. Um, Under Charlemagne, with the support of the Roman Catholic Church, the Franks are able to bring together most of Europe under one state and under one religion, Christianity, for the very first time since the Romans. So, I mean, this is a period of 350, almost 400 years. And side by side, the Roman Catholic Church and the Franks celebrate their victory. There's a huge ceremony on Christmas Day in, I think it's 801, where the Pope himself crowns Charlemagne as Emperor of the Romans. And this is a pretty significant event, because what this signifies is a couple of things. Number one, it signifies the massive political influence of the Roman Catholic Church. The fact that the most powerful leader in Europe would kneel before the Pope in order to accept his crown says quite a bit about the level of power that the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church has. Um, Another really important thing that this signifies is this signifies the direction that Europe is going to go in over the next several centuries. And that direction is kind of a unification of a couple of different things. It's a unification of the Germanic people and their culture alongside the Roman Catholic Church and Christian faith, alongside the traditions and kind of grasping for the revival of the Roman Empire, right? And over the next several hundred years, that's going to be kind of a continuing goal within European politics is every, powerful leader, powerful king envisions themselves as the next Roman emperor, as the one who's going to revive the glory of that Roman empire. Now, unfortunately for Charlemagne and the Franks, all of this unity is very short lived. After his death, his three sons divide the empire amongst the three of them and immediately go to war with one another. And within a few decades of his death, there's going to be a new threat to political stability in Europe, and that's going to be the invasion of Vikings out of Scandinavia, right? So this map kind of gives you a good idea of just exactly what the Franks and the Roman Catholic Church were able to accomplish, especially under Charlemagne. Um, Basically, what you have here is, I mean, with the exception of Muslim Spain and the British Isles, the Franks are able to, for a short period of time, at least politically, maybe not culturally, maybe not economically, but politically, they are able to revive the strength and the unity of the Roman Empire. And like I said, that's going to be a common theme and a common goal in European history going forward for several centuries after